Hey, Romans class. Just want to give you a brief word that offers some guidance on the transition from your interpretive working paper to your advanced interpretive paper on the same passage. Several of you have asked me whether you can use material from your interpretive working paper when you are drafting your advanced interpretive paper on the same passage. And the answer to that is, of course, because what you have done in that interpretive working paper, hopefully, is a lot of the preliminary analysis that now you're going to be kind of pulling from as you form a more sort of sustained and cohesive argument for the meaning of the whole of the passage, of the stages of the passage that develop the meaning of that whole, and then the detailed treatment of each of those stages in the passage so as to clarify how Paul's argument unfolds the way it does, what it means, how it reaches its intended purpose. So the interpretive working paper is fair game. The caution there is the advanced paper does ask for another level, shall we say, of sophistication from what you were doing in your working paper. You're no longer sort of tentatively asking questions, investigating what Paul might be saying here or there. Now you have done enough study to be able to say, here is what Paul is saying, and then to substantiate that with an interpretive argument that is appealing to the text, interpreting it to bring out its meaning according to what you say the passage means. I recognize that one of the great challenges for this paper, as you already experience in the working paper, is Romans is a kind of single tapestry of argument. And so it's easy as you're trying to sort of situate your passage in the argument of the letter to get so pulled away by how it fits into the letter as a whole that you don't really have much space left to focus on the internal nitty-gritty development of the passage. And so you want to guard against that. Of course, you want to give some attention to how your passage sits in the flow of Romans, but you want that always to be oriented to clarifying what Paul is saying in your passage, discussing the specific textual details, the specific language and sequence of phrases and sentences that Paul uses to say what he says. So make sure that you try to discipline yourself to use anything you say about the broader context of Romans, the broader argument of the letter, to clarify what Paul is saying in your passage. That's really important. The other thing about this paper that I want to remind you about, and all of this is in the guide, but I find it's helpful to sort of hear it maybe in different ways. I mean the assignment guide. But it is that the other way that your paper now has a new level of sophistication, this advanced paper compared to the interpretive working paper, is that now I'm really asking you to do some justice to the force of Paul's argument in the passage that you're interpreting. And that is a force that is not just academic. It's a force that is pastoral, that is living, that is political in a certain sense. It's an exposition of Paul's gospel. And so you want your interpretation, as detailed and textually oriented as it might be, to have a kind of preachy edge to it. Because to me, that's part of what it means to interpret Romans. Romans is not just about filling books with kind of remote analysis, you know. Uh, Romans is a letter that is presenting Paul's gospel in a particular way to particular people with particular needs. And so an interpretation of Romans is going to convey some of that living force or call of the letter upon the reader. So, as much as we sometimes accustom you at Fuller to kind of taking the role of a relatively maybe distant analyst of what is happening in the Bible, I really don't want you to settle into that in this paper. Instead, I want you to strive to actually voice uh, the words of Paul's letter as sort of proclamation of Paul's gospel, and to do that in a way that is doing justice to the details of the text that you are interpreting. So, hopefully, that gives you a little bit of added clarity for what you're trying to accomplish in this passage, and especially how you are moving in this assignment from a kind of uh, investigation, questioning, analysis that you did in your working paper to now a sustained, coherent argument for the interpretation of your passage, an argument that has a beginning, a middle, and an end, and has a sort of pastoral edge to the interpretation that hopefully resonates with Paul's own purpose for the passage that you are studying.